My friend Steve over at Film Trigger just ranked all the live action Superman movies worst to best. And it was so fun watching that ranking. I thought, why haven't I done that? So I'm gonna rank all the Superman movies worst to best. Plus, I'm gonna add a Superman movie in there that he didn't have. You hear that, Steve? Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my ranking of all 8 Superman live-action movies, worst to best. Like I said, I was inspired to do this because my good friend Steve over at Film Trigger did this. I had so much fun watching his video. I'm like, why haven't I done that? So I'm going to rank all of those movies right now. Plus, I am going to add an extra one in this ranking that he did not have in his ranking. He may have talked about it, but I'm going to rank it. And I'm super excited to dive into that. Check out my friend Steve's video. Let him know what you think of that. Tell him Durbin says hi. Rank the videos there in his comments. And then, right here in my comment section, how would you rank all 8 of these Superman movies? Let's talk about that. Number 8, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. It's just not a good movie. You can see, though, that it really wants to be. It has this incredibly interesting premise. You know, being that Superman has the power to disarm the world. And so this kid, bit of an overactor in the movie if you ask me, writes Superman this letter saying, why don't you disarm the world? If we're having this arms race and nobody's doing anything in the peace summit felt, why don't you go and take away everybody's nukes? Superman just saves people. He doesn't get involved politically. And then he announces in front of the UN, that's what he's gonna do. He makes this bold decision that he's gonna go and personally, by himself, disarm the world. What's incredibly disappointing is everything else. Because it's like, all of that is just the setup to give us Nuclear Man. Missed the opportunity to go deeper into that. What if a country resists him? How could they resist him? What if he disarms one nation completely, but misses a few in another nation, like just doesn't see them? We didn't dive into that, even though we do see them fire missiles and he catches them, and that seems to be the only way he's getting them. Like everybody firing them up in the air and he goes and he catches. It's confusing, and he puts them in a giant net. Who made him the net? Star Labs? They don't talk about Star Labs. Point is it has this interesting premise, and it just hits the shallow end of that premise, using the disarmament thing as a way to create Nuclear Man, which...
You have my voice. No, you have my voice.
Not very impressive with his, like, cat claws, and he scratches Superman, which makes him sick, and then he has to use the green crystal to restore his power, just like in Superman 2. So it just gets so swallowed up in cheesiness that it misses where it could have gone completely. You could definitely tell it has a lower budget and all that stuff. It's really kind of sad to watch this movie. I couldn't even bring myself to watch this movie all the way through. Though when I'm skipping through scenes, there's some fun stuff. Like the double date where Superman's on a date with Lois Lane and Clark Kent is on a date with the daughter of the guy who bought the Daily Planet. And Superman or Clark has to keep throwing up distractions so they can run off somewhere, change into the other persona, and run back. Like, it's kind of funny, but it goes much longer than it should. And it's also kind of funny to see John Cryer in this movie.
Oh no.
Lenny Luthor, the nephew of Lex Luthor. And it's funny because now here in the CW verse, he is Lex Luthor. I don't like his Lex Luthor. And that could be I just have a personal vendetta against him because his Lex Luthor destroyed Brandon Routh right in the middle of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he took his place. Come on. Number 7, Superman 3. What I like better about this one for sure is Annette O'Toole as Lana Lang. She is so good in that role. She's just playing the girl next door, which is exactly what she is to Clark, and she plays it so well. Like, her smile is infectious. She has great chemistry on screen with Clark Kent and Superman, and you could understand why he forgot what he learned in Superman 2 about not putting one human above another and taking a lump of coal and smashing it into a diamond and giving it to her. He didn't ask her to marry him, but he gave her this diamond, and it's like, I get it. She was such a great character. It made me wish the Lana Lang on the show Smallville had the same personality as that Lana. I would have for sure been less irritated every single time she popped up on screen, which is also funny. Lana Lang in Superman 3 is Martha Kent on the show Smallville. Something else about this movie that I liked was Richard Pryor creating kryptonite because there was an element of unknown stuff in it. So he's smoking a cigarette. He's like, all right, we'll just make it tar. And so basically it's green, but he creates red kryptonite. It has the same effect on Superman that red kryptonite does, where it takes away his inhibition. So we get to see dark Superman. And prepare yourself for this. Superman gets so dark. Lean in. He straightens out the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I know. I mean, that's some dark stuff we're dealing with here. And he goes to a bar. Whoa. But one of my favorite parts is when he splits into two and you have Dark Superman versus Clark Kent. It's cheesy as all else, but I do like that scene. I get mad when I watch this movie, though, because it missed Brainiac. I mean, they made this supercomputer, and it acted like Brainiac, sort of. I mean, it wasn't alive. Well, it was alive, but it could have been Brainiac. That's the whole problem. They missed it. It should have been Brainiac beginning to end. That would have been an unforgettable villain, and it's such a missed opportunity. It makes me so angry, on top of the fact that the movie's just meh. Number 6, Superman Returns. There's things about this movie that I like, and there's things about this movie that I don't like. What I like about this movie, I think Brandon Routh does a good job playing Christopher Reeve's Superman. It's kind of sad because we don't get to see Brandon Routh's take on the character because he is doing Christopher Reeve's take on the character. Which means because it's not Christopher Reeve just naturally playing that character, it doesn't carry with it that same weight and same gravitas. At the same time, I think Brandon Routh does a great job carrying that persona and that particular Superman forward. He did a good job being nasally and clumsy Clark Kent and then transforming into Superman, the way I think Christopher Reeve did. So I think he did a good job carrying that persona forward, and he did a good job playing that role. The other thing that was cool was Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor, because one of the scenes I like is when Brandon Routh, he lands on that Kryptonite island and he faces Lex Luthor. You can feel the history between Lex and Superman. You can feel the anger in Lex Luthor that Superman robbed him of 5 years of his life in prison. Like, you just feel that history that is between them. So I think Lex Luthor did a good job with Gene Hackman's Luthor. Kind of, where would he be if he was this angry, having lost 5 years of his life and wanting this revenge with Superman? How has his character grown and matured? And so I feel like those two on screen together were really good. And that moment where he's beating the tar out of Superman, I was just so excited for Superman to come back and defeat Lex Luthor. The ending with Lex Luthor on that little tiny desert island, which is kind of lame, but you know, whatever. I love the airplane scene where Superman catches the airplane in the beginning. That is just so incredibly well done. Seeing nerdy Clark Kent suddenly fly up as the awesome Superman and catch that plane and bring it down. Oh, it was just so cool. So there were a lot of moments in this movie that were cool. What I don't like, I do not like Superman having an illegitimate kid. That just feels so uncharacteristic of Superman. And I think this is the new Superman 3. So a rewrite Superman 3 and 4, which means, you know, he didn't know Lois was pregnant, so he had to leave pretty much within a month after the events of the theatrical cut of Superman 2, I could assume, because he wouldn't be a deadbeat dad running out of fear, and he obviously didn't know that that was his kid. That's not Superman. On so many levels to me, that's just weird, and I can't wrap my head around it. Couldn't the first time I watched the movie, and I still can't do it now. The other thing is, this is supposed to be a Superman 2 sequel, a new Superman 3. But, you know, Superman 2 was what, late 70s, early 80s? And he's been gone for only 5 years? And he's back and there's, like, I don't know, cell phones, computers with flat screens? I'm just saying, you know, where does this movie fit? They should have at least had it take place in the 80s. You know, that would have been fine. I think we've learned now with the Joker, hindsight is 20/20. We could have set this in the late 70s, early 80s and been just fine. We could have set this 5 years after Superman 2, put it in that exact time period, and the audience would have been fine with it. And it's just kind of irritating that they didn't, because it makes it this weird thing inside of these Christopher Reeve movies. Number 5, Superman 2, the theatrical cut. As a sequel to Superman the movie, I think it's a good sequel. It carries on the story of Zod, Ursa, and Nod being thrown into the Phantom Zone and released in this one, and they were really good villains. And what I liked was the idea and the story, the whole premise, like the idea that Superman falling in love with Lois has to become immortal in order to be with her. So he lays down his powers, and as he's laying down his powers, then these 3 super-powered beings show up from Krypton with all the power of the yellow sun, and now Earth's hope is not here to defeat them. And so now he's got to sacrifice Lois to regain his powers in order to save the whole world. I think it's a very interesting premise. And I overall liked it. Overall, I thought it had a good execution. Things that I thought were kind of weak. First off, I have a hard time buying into the idea that he has to become mortal to be with Lois. And maybe it's because the benefit of hindsight, all the other Superman graphic novels, all the other Superman movies, and all the other things that have been made, they do a fine job of Superman being with Lois Lane. And Smallville particularly spoiled me on this because Lois Lane said, I can't be with him because he's got to save the world. He can't focus on me. And Chloe says to Lois, you are what grounds him. So this idea that Lois and Superman can't be together because he's got powers and he's got this mission makes no sense, because I would think their love would remind him of why he's fighting for the world. Point is I still, even as a kid, had a hard time buying that idea. Why did he have to be powerless in order to be with Lois? And so I don't feel like they did such a great job explaining that, which means Superman reclaiming his powers, it didn't feel like this huge thing, because in the theatrical cut, he gives up his powers. His mom makes it sound like it's this great big deal. He can never regain them. But when he comes back, that little green crystal lights up and you don't see what happens. It just cuts back to Metropolis and Superman shows up and he's Superman. Like it was no big deal. It's like, fine, we could say it's great, but really it's not that big of a deal, Kal-El. If you give up your powers, you could get it right back. And so it kind of took away the power in his choice to become Superman again, especially where I'm having a hard time buying the idea of why does he have to be mortal in order to be with Lois? He could be Superman and be with her just fine. But I love the villains. I think Zod, Ursa, and Nod are great villains in this movie. I enjoyed the Metropolis fight and Superman looking around and going, oh my gosh, I gotta get him out of here. I did not like when he got them out of there, they get to the Fortress of Solitude, and all of a sudden he's got these random powers that have never been established anywhere. What, pulling the S off his suit and turns into that plastic sheet that stops Nod for what, a second and a half? Like what's that gonna do?
What was that? Yeah, take that, you jerk. That was a minor inconvenience. Yeah, well, that's the idea. Slowed you down, I'll say.
Or him projecting holograms of himself all over the... What? Where are these powers coming from? And then, okay, here's what really grinds my gears. When people get upset with Superman and Man of Steel snapping Zod's neck, or the destruction in Metropolis, when... Get this. Get a little closer. In Superman 2, he makes Zod helpless, gets rid of all of his powers. Then he takes Zod by the hand and breaks every single bone in his hand. So made him helpless, and now he's torturing him. And then he grabs Zod by the collar, and with all of his strength, slams him into the ice wall of the fortress where Zod falls into a pit of despair. Okay? Imagine how bad all of that hurt. And if Zod was unfortunate enough to survive that, imagine him dying of cold or starvation or just his wounds in the most painful manner possible as Superman just decides, I guess, to pretend he's not there and just leaves him to die. Okay, the Superman that snapped Zod's neck in Man of Steel didn't want to snap Zod's neck. He was forced into it, and he tortured himself over the fact that he had to do that, which makes, I guess, Henry Cavill's Superman more humane than the Superman 2 Superman. Did I just say that? Yes. I think I did. But Superman 2 is just so hokey that we don't even really realize how much he tortured and destroyed Zod before he actually killed him. I love Christopher Reeve as Superman, so don't hear me wrong. And overall, Superman 2 is a really good sequel. Number 4, Batman vs. Superman, the Ultimate Edition. I've talked about this one quite a bit on my channel, so to sum up my feelings for this movie, I both really like it and I'm really disappointed with it. I really like it because I like Ben Affleck as Batman. The warehouse scene is great because it showcases the full mobility of this Batman, what he's capable of even though he's older. I like the idea of the older, grizzled Batman dealing with the demons of his past in this one. I love Wonder Woman showing up, how they built up to her showing up, that this was a live-action DC Trinity movie. My gosh! Yes, that's incredibly awesome. To sum up what I really don't like about this movie, to me, it just felt rushed. The fact that we went from Man of Steel, the first of the DCEU, to this, I just feel like this all came too soon. For instance, the infamous Martha scene. I mean, I think there's a lot of power in that scene because that's the scene where Batman realizes he's become the monsters he's fought against all of his life. He's making Superman powerless to save his mother. Batman in an alley was once powerless to save his mother. Alfred said those feelings of powerlessness that turned good men cruel. So that's what we're seeing. Those feelings of powerlessness had turned him cruel. What we're missing is even at the very least a flashback to the death of Robin in this movie to see how that impacted him. The best we could have done is have a solo Batfleck film where we saw the beginning of this character arc, because it feels like we just come in the middle of this arc without the beginning. And so we're missing that whole thing that builds up to this Martha moment. And if we got that appropriate build up to that scene, I think, would have had the power that it was intended to have. And then you have the whole death of Superman, which is probably one of my favorite Superman stories, except this was rushed. It was the second movie. I do like the idea that his death is the reason we need a Justice League, because something bigger is now coming and there's no Superman to defend the world. Very cool, unique take, but I feel like they just killed him off too soon, and I would have loved another solo Man of Steel movie to see him adapt to the world post Man of Steel after all the destruction in Metropolis. Like, I would have liked very much so to have seen that. I'm not saying be like the MCU with tons of solo films, but I'm saying they should have let this breathe just a little bit more before we jumped into BVS, so that we would have had these complete character arcs. Number 3, Superman 2, The Richard Donner Cut. The very film that Steve over at Film Trigger did not rank. Don't worry, buddy. I'll rank it where you should have in your ranking. What really transforms this movie for me and sets it leaps and bounds above the theatrical cut is the return of Marlon Brando. Yes, there's a lot of really cool things here and there that are different, like how Lois Lane finds out he's Superman. I thought that was incredibly excellent. I'll save that for your viewing, but I'll spoil everything else. The return of Marlon Brando was just so cool because it added more weight to Superman laying down his powers. For instance, when he's arguing with Jor-El, saying that he's in love with Lois Lane, what you're really seeing is this father-son relationship. And you're seeing how bad Kal-El wants to be mortal so that he can be with Lois Lane. I don't think this movie did any better job explaining to me why he had to lay down his powers to be with Lois Lane. That still kind of frustrates me, but I liked the emotion better in this movie where Jor-El is imploring him, think before you do this. And he didn't. He didn't think about it at all, and he laid down his power. And then Zod shows up. So when he goes to take his power back, just like the theatrical cut, the green crystal lights up, but instead of cutting away, he puts the green crystal in the console and Jor-El reappears with one final message, that just like Jor-El gave his life for him once when he was small, he anticipated this moment, and it will exhaust all that is left in him to give Kal-El back his powers, but he will gladly lay his life down again for his son. And it adds a price that Kal-El had to pay to get his power back. Adding that price added a new weight to that choice, plus the emotions. The emotions in that when Jor-El lays his hand on Kal-El's shoulder and gives him his power back, and Kal-El's realizing he will never talk to his father again. It's powerful. It does get kind of undermined because this movie ends with him turning the world backwards, but that's how Superman 2 was supposed to end. That's not how Superman the movie was supposed to end. They thought it was a stronger ending, so they moved that ending to the first movie. And then, when they were making this one, and they can't go back and reshoot things, so they were between a rock and a hard place. In a way, it does kind of undermine the power in that moment, except I think Clark carries with him the memory of the price of laying down his powers, so therefore, he doesn't do it this time when he turns the world backwards, and Superman 2 starts all over again. And I think that's kind of the difference, at least that's how I justify it. But honestly, it undercuts it a little bit. Still, the emotion in those scenes between Kal-El and Jor-El is worth it, and it makes this movie infinitely better. Number 2, Man of Steel. I love this movie. I love the real-world setting of this movie. How would our world react to somebody like Superman? And how would he react to our world? I love the exploration of that, and I still see him smile on this movie, especially when he's flying for the first time. He keeps losing his fake identities he's creating because he keeps stepping out and saving people. So we see that side of him even in this world. I love how Lois Lane figures out who he is at the beginning. We have a smart Lois Lane, and her knowing who Clark is from the very beginning, I just feel like makes the relationship stronger, and it deepens the relationship for me, and I enjoy that as I'm watching this movie. When Zod shows up, I love the contrast between Krypton and Earth, and how Kal-El is kind of forced to choose between Krypton being reborn and the Earth. And, Clark is thinking, let's share. Zod is thinking, no, I'm destroying everything and creating Krypton again, because he's a slave to being a part of that artificial population control. He has something that is written in his DNA that the only thing he is able to care about is Krypton at the expense of all else, and he takes it to that next evil level, but he's a slave to it and he can't escape it. So Superman chooses the world that adopted him, even if they're afraid of him. There's so much in this movie that I really like. Does the destruction bother me? No, because most of that was the world engine anyway. Superman did what he had to do. I really do like Man of Steel. Number 1, Superman the movie. Yeah, this one is my number 1. Is it nostalgia? Yes, and I don't even care. I am not the least bit sorry about that. Without the 1978 Superman movie and the 1989 Batman movie, I doubt I would be the superhero fan that I am. Those movies really drew me into this superhero world, and Christopher Reeve, he is Superman. And what I always liked about him is power never corrupted him. He was always this good guy. But what always reached out to me, even as a kid, it was the fact that outwardly, he was this Clark Kent who, you know, is nasally, nerdy, bumbly, and all that stuff. And me, I was kind of like that. I always felt kind of weak around other people and felt kind of clumsy and bumbly and fumbly. And so I related to Clark. And yet, underneath that mild-mannered identity was Superman. And underneath this, Jesus lives in my heart. And so I know there's that strength and that power in me and that call that he has on my life. Underneath that mild-mannered exterior of Clark Kent is Kal-El of Krypton, and is all those gifts and talents and abilities and that call on his life. And so that always stood out to me and that always spoke to me. Is this movie a little bit cheesy? Oh no, it's very cheesy. But none of it really bugged me because of how great Christopher Reeve was. Just his portrayal of Superman, it drowned out everything, especially for the imagination of a child like me. This just drew me into that world of superheroes. So that's my ranking of all 8 live-action Superman movies, worst to best. How would you rank all 8 of these movies? Let's do that in the comments. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. And head over to Film Trigger, check out Steve's video, and see how he ranked them, and tell him Durbin sent you. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.